with Paul Daner, Mark Salafo. Kick off the weekend, alright? It's the Growler Friday show. It's Dey Light.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of Dey Light. Paul Daner Jr. of The Athletic, Mark Salafo. What's going on?
It's a good Friday. Joe Burrow is throwing the football again. You know, everyone's happy in the city of Cincinnati. There's a lot to like. We're at that point now in Cincinnati weather where it's only going to snow 2 or 3 more times. So I'm happy today.
Yeah, we're still in, false hope season where it's like you get pulled back down into the sadness of, oh no, it's cold again. But you know what? You can't stop it. You can't stop me now. Baseball season has started. We're in the draft. I'm eyeing the draft. All the good things are happening. So I'm on board. I think it's just only good vibes from here on out. Big weekend. The tournament's still happening. Like I'm just in a good place, except for all my brackets and stuff. But nobody cares about that.
Yeah. So you didn't win the athletic office pool, is what you're saying.
That's
how bad were your picks? Would you have lost the Growler podcast pool out of like the 5 of us?
They were bad. You don't want really the team that you get behind and you feel like is really going to be the special pick that you make that's going to put you over the top to lose to Yale.
Oh no, that's was your play.
Good. You don't want to have them lose to Yale on the first day. And it's like, oh, well, so much for this year.
Yeah.
Damn,
like,
you
this is
Ivy
a baseball
League.
Town. You just move on. You burn your bracket.
Yeah.
Like this is a stupid event anyway. Let's get back to real sports where you get paid the proper way, not get paid for commercials.
Speaking of real sport, real sports are happening, like pro days, lots of running and throwing in underwear is happening on college campuses. And so there's the end of the pro day season is kind of happening right now. So we're almost to the draft. So I hope everybody is out there taking in all their pro day videos. It's a kind of a low point for me in draft season is when people are analyzing pro day videos like, oh, look at this, look at the movement skills. Heard he was really great with the positions. Although I do had dinner with said team, like big player at pro day, had dinner with the night before his pro day, the Giants. And it's like, move your mocks. Here we go. Dinner's been had.
I love the breaking news. My mock draft has been updated, like it's really going to have any material effect to what happens in the actual draft. But my mind has been subtly changed. You're not going to believe it. Click this link.
No, I love it. All right. Reminder, if you guys have questions that you want to send in, we're going to go through some good old Bengal stuff and then some other weird stuff. It might be a weird episode, judging by some of your directions this week. And we appreciate that. Send all your questions to the Growler Podcast.com and the Growler Podcast at gmail.com. Look,
you're in tip-top shape today, Paul. That opening day. Yeah. Send it to the Growler
opening day was a lot of fun.
We are going to get a lot of emails just sent out into the ether now because they can't find it. They can't put it together. They can't really understand that @gmail.com part. So they're going to be lost in the void.
That's all right. And make sure you're watching us on YouTube and subscribing and saying nice things, potentially rating, doing all those things you're supposed to do. Please do that.
And shout out to our new cities. We've heard people that are listening in Austin, Texas, somewhere in Minnesota. I forgot to write that one down. We also got an email, a pessimistic person about our Zimbabwe listen. And he's just wondering if he's being too overly pessimistic or if those are just VPNs and not real listeners.
Oh,
how do you feel about the scandal? Just
is this our first scandal that we don't really have the Zimbabwe market on lock?
And the thing that I would respond to that is we've already heard from people in some weird places. We have listeners in St. Charles, Missouri. Like that's a weird place that you don't think of. We've heard from the Philippines and Colombia. So there are some actual listeners in these places. So I've got no reason to believe that we don't have a Zimbabwe listener out there.
No, not at all. And in fact, I'm going to see if we've updated. No, Turks and Caicos still at 1. Still our one standout, and but we have added one in Taiwan as well. So good to have Taiwan here with us now. But we'll move forward here and we can get into some of your guys' questions here in a second. I don't know how'd the questions come this week. We got a lot.
We've got some great questions. This is what I want people to remember. This is your show. It's not just me and Paul talking about our lives, even though we would love to do that and just catch up every week, do a little bit of Bengals talk. This is your show. So some of these questions today are a little bit out there. They're a little bit weird. And
that's your fault, not ours.
We're not afraid to go there is the point that you need to remember. So continue to send us your questions. If you want me to ambush Paul with them, I can do that. Just make sure you make a note of that. And then, we'll really spring it on him. You'll get a sense of his true self, not his meticulously prepared self that he presents to the world in his craft and in his online presence. So those are important. We did get a fun YouTube comment because we were talking about Bob Herzog last week and the crazy person that makes his, morning after friends watch Bob. Yeah. And we wondered if that could be in our future, if people are going to start listening to the Growler the morning after hooking up with somebody. And we did have somebody say from Kane on YouTube, forget morning after, gentlemen. I listen to the Growler screen mirroring to my big screen on surround sound intercourse.
Wow.
My partner finds Mark's smooth as butter voice quite arousing. I've learned to accept it. We're not judging that, whatever is going to bring our people joy, that is what we are here for. Now, mainly, we thought we were going to help people get through the workday with some fun Bengals talk and just some fun other stuff. But if that is going to help you with your Friday in different ways, we're here for you.
Yeah, we just want to bring support to the community. We just want to help you guys, and so if that's how you want to use it, then feel free. I don't recommend that. I don't think it's going to be a consistent winner for others that haven't tried this yet, but thanks to you, good man, good sir, and I'm glad that it's worked for you. But again, don't try this at home.
Right. Well, we like to give creative points to anybody that uses the podcast in a unique way. I never foresaw that in the cards 1 month into our show, but sometimes you'll have that. You ready to dive into some of these Bengals questions?
Let's go. Let's
All
do
right,
it.
so
Bengals
the first
questions.
one is one that I share. This is a big one that I want to know. We're at that point of free agency. There's not a lot of action left to happen. Bengals still have some money. What are they waiting to spend it on, Paul?
That's a good question because there's not really much out there to spend. I mean, they're in the back end of the top 10 in cap space right now. So they've got they're not like in some crazy position where it's like, wow, look at all the money they're sitting on. They usually leave themselves a bunch of space anyway, just by their own personal strategy. So there's certainly some additions that they can do, one or two more things, but I don't know that there's some big thing necessarily that's sitting there. One thing that you can do is speculate, which we love to do. It's a good Friday show deal to speculate, but there could the addition, like we said, would have to probably come from maybe acquiring somebody else's salary from another team in a trade. There's things there that you can do to use that money, but I don't think that there's some big target for it right now, but there's still plenty of time to find ways that they could be using it. There's not some big money plan out there. I think it could be used in getting somebody via trade or whatever, but I don't think that there's a specific plan that's like, wow, there's one free agent sitting out there that they're holding out hope for.
Yeah, it doesn't seem as clear. I do like speculation season, though. You bring up a possible absorbing some salary in a trade. That would be fun and interesting. You did catch some flack for suggesting the Dax Hill trade, but that could be a scenario where you get rid of Dax and bring back somebody you have to pay. That could be an interesting use of it. I kind of wish that if they did have a pile of money left over and nothing that comes to fruition, that they could have used it on a cornerback maybe to solidify some depth there, or you throw it at DJ Reader if you think that he's going to be healthy enough, given how much we've talked about that defensive line and the issues there.
Yeah.
You got some leftover cash It's just going to make that hurt more if there isn't some sort of subsequent move.
Yeah, and I do think veteran corner will be the one thing, but again, that's not going to be. I mean, we're talking about a
splashy
team.
veteran corner though.
No, they just have a lot of money sitting there, but that's not going to get used on a veteran corner. You're looking at $1 or $2 million for that.
Yeah, and with Trent Brown's money being a little bit less than I thought it was going to be too, that I just, it kind of makes me wish they had spent it in a flashier way, because that's what fans want. We want those big marquee signings and get all excited, right, and like, yeah, we brought in another big guy. Yeah. Let's go. We're going to do this. This is another good question about free agency and the money from Michael. With a decent amount of cap space left and not many great players available in free agency for positions of need, could they use any of that space for any of the following? Front loading a T. Higgins extension so the cap damage isn't as bad down the road, front loading a Jamar extension to that effect, or bringing forward some of that Burrow money to lessen his contract cap hits later. Do you think any of those are likely or possible?
No, I don't think any of them are likely. I think that they have everything in a pretty good place for where they want it, particularly with the Burrow deal. I think we know what T. Higgins' situation is likely to be, and they want him. Katie Blackburn talked at the owners' meetings this week and kind of said, like, look, we're just going to get through this year with T and then reassess. Like, I think we know their plan. Like, I think people want it to be something different, but I think we know their plan. They want T to play here on this $21.8 million this year, and then figure out next year. And if there's a way to do it, cool. If not, that's probably not going to happen. So, and the Jamar extension isn't something they're going to get to this offseason. Almost certainly. I talked about this yesterday with Jay, because the people keep talking about Jamar extension and it keeps finding itself into the news cycle. And that's just not really a thing of non-quarterbacks signing extensions that have fifth-year options still, where they haven't even gotten to that part of the pro before their fourth season. It's very, 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 very rare. And so I wouldn't anticipate that here, especially when you have CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson deals still will have to get done at some point this offseason, and Chase doesn't do anything before that. So I think that ends up next year almost certainly. I think they have a plan for all three of those guys that was set in place with Burrow's contract that's playing itself out right now. So I don't think they would change that right now at all, because they don't have that much extra money sitting there compared to what they normally would this time of year.
And I do think that, like with the Higgins stuff, people are going to talk themselves into that until the day he is with another team. There's still people out there like, hey, we got rid of Jesse Bates because we were holding that money for T. It's going to come together. Let's keep the band together forever. We need him, especially if he plays more games this year, because he was banged up last year. If he has a strong season, those echoes are only going to get louder, even though I think like it's pretty clear to everybody that's paying attention how this is going to play out. But, fans aren't going to give up on those big guys. And that's a part two from Michael here. With Tyler Boyd sitting there for a while now, do you think the Bengals make an offer at some point? If not, why not?
I just think they want something different out of that position. I think they love Tyler Boyd and who he was and what he brought. And I do think they'll miss some of him, his sort of savvy and attitude, but they want more explosiveness. I wrote about this last week. Like, every decision that they've been making offensively this season has been about adding more explosiveness and finding ways to switch that explosive play rate from being in the bottom 10 to being in the top 10, because those teams in the, I showed you the in that story, the 7 of the 8 teams that were in the tops of an explosive play rate were there in the playoffs. They won a bunch of games. 3 of the 4 teams that played in conference championship games. When defenses their sole goal is to keep everything in front of them and avoid explosive plays, the teams that are breaking that goal the most often are the ones that are winning the most games and doing it on repeat. And so that's today's NFL. Then they weren't very explosive because partially scheme, partially personnel, and that's part of it. I think somebody who can be more can bring a little more explosion out of the slot in terms of stretching the seam. You're getting that a little bit with Gesicki. Boyd's not that. Like, that's not his game, and that's totally fine. And so I think they want to go a different direction in that way.
Yeah, some fans are just afraid of change. That's why you get the people that really
absolutely. I mean, that dude's been here. I mean, he's been somebody that you've watched score how many touchdowns, and and you appreciate these guys. You get to know them as people. They were part of this special time in Bengals fandom. So yeah, I get the attachment. I think everybody feels that way, but the NFL has to change. This other thing I'm going to say, there's a great episode of the Athletic NFL podcast out right now with Robert Mays and Mina Kimes as his guest, and they talk about the future of the NFL wide receiver market. And it's really fascinating point in time for that, because I think we've gotten to the point, and Mina made this point, and we've been saying this here because the Bengals have been at the center of this discussion for a couple of years now, in that expecting a good receiver draft and expecting rookie receivers to produce is not something you hope for anymore. It's something you can expect. Every draft is like this. They're all stocked now. They all have these, and these guys all come in and they all play well, and they're not even just first round picks. It's Puka Nacua and Tank Dell and Rashee Rice and dudes that are found on day 2 and 3. And you do have real first round blue chip guys, it seems like, every year. And you've got that again this year. And that's been the case for a while. You can expect that. You're never going to feel an lurch at that position, because every year it shows back up. And so you do have to turn it forward. So but the idea of paying number twos, holding on to older slot receivers, is you just can't do that in today's NFL if you want to be a smart team, because the smart teams understand you just have to bank on the fact that these young receivers are going to come in, and especially if they match up with Joe Burrow, be able to be instantly very productive. And yeah, you got to hit on those draft picks, but that's the case anyway. No matter who you pick, it's going to be critical for you. So I think you got to keep that in mind. When we keep talking about these guys, is like you can count on that. You can count on these drafts coming and continuing to look like a version of this one, which is historically strong. But I think they all have been now for really a matter of the last 3-4 years.
And I think, to me, if you look at the Bengals guys that we kind of knew that were going to be gone this free agency period, you kind of think how things are going to go. And I kind of thought that Tyler Boyd would have ended up in Pittsburgh a little bit earlier. He might end up there in the end, but I thought that there would be a team that would appreciate like a veteran like that coming into the room. And, there's clear reasons, like you just explained, about why a team might be hesitant to throw a lot of money at him, just because there is so much talent in the draft. But, if I'm looking at him and Joe Mixon, I definitely would have thought Tyler Boyd would be making more money playing football this next season than Joe Mixon would. So, nothing's off the table, I guess, since that was as shocking as it was.
Yeah, and we'll see. Maybe TB is hanging out to wait until after the draft for a team that doesn't get the receiver they thought they were going to get, and then looks back to free agency and he's hanging out there. Or maybe he's just like, there's no rush. I don't know why TB hasn't necessarily signed up yet, because there have been teams interested. So we'll see how it plays out for him. But there's reason for him to maybe wait until after the draft if that's something that he wants to do, or just see if he can get a little bit more money out of whoever's talking to him.
Great. He had a great career here. That doesn't mean they need to keep him here for all of it. Very rarely does that happen anymore in the modern NFL, where you're going to spend every season with the same team. This is Joe Burrow's franchise. We've talked about that at length in this city, about how he's changed things. And, the input that he has with the front office is still something that people have questions about. So this is from Amber. How involved is Joe B really in free agency? Does he help, do some recruiting and send some guys to the Bengals administration to get them on board? Is he telling management who to target the other way and go after about that? Is he finding out about signings before they happen? Or is he just on his phone learning about them on Twitter like the rest of us?
He knows before we do. I can tell you that much. No, I think any major signing, specifically any major offensive signing, he has input in. Now, is he saying go get that guy? No, I don't think so. I don't get the impression that that's the case, but I do get the impression that he gets one of the first 3 calls, like when it's like, okay, here's who we're looking at. We're talking about Orlando Brown today. We're talking about Trent Brown. We're talking about a receiver. What do you think? And do you want to watch, or maybe he watches some tape or whatever, or somebody you might know. Yeah, they want to know his input. They want to hear what he has to say. They want him to call that guy and recruit that guy or whatever. Whatever contact if that can be had at that time. yeah, they're interested. He's the sell. I mean, he's the closer, right? I mean, he's the ultimate closer in any deal here now. Forget bringing anybody else in. I mean, he's the star and people want to see him. And so he is involved in that way. But no, I don't. He's not like storming into Duke's office and said, it's got to be this guy today. No, I just think they reach out to him. He appreciates that they reach out to him. They want his input because they want him to have people here that he feels like he can work with. And again, specifically offensively, you're not going to see him, chasing down Geno Stone on the road and trying to. That's not as much his game as far as where he's going to have input in. But yeah, I think he's definitely in those conversations as he should be. He's the face of the franchise, and that's a big deal.
And I think sometimes people think about that too much because they put a lot of pressure on quarterbacks anyway for wins, for losses, the performance of the team. And, sometimes you think about your franchise quarterback like he's a second GM, like he's going to come in there with his list and here's the guys that we need. And, maybe sometimes you could talk yourself into that because it's like, who are the big splashy guys they signed? Guys that did good against Joe Burrow. He got sacked 3 times. Then Joe goes to the sideline. He writes down in his little notebook, here's a guy I need to target personally in the offseason. Geno Stone with the interception. He's like, oh, I got to file that away for when I switch into GM mode and start making some plays here.
But I mean, you know what the thing was? I mean, those conversations were also had during the season of Burrow being like, man, Geno Stone gave me fits today. I mean, he tricked me. He got me on that one. And that doesn't happen often. I have so much respect for that guy. He plays real smart out there. We need somebody smart, man. Burrow said he was like tricking him out there and really playing games. If you can do that to him, you can do it to anybody. That plays, and they knew that in week 2 last year. I mean, they knew all that stuff. And so that compiles over time, just the fact that they go, he's so involved in every conversation in every part of the team. And they, it's not a thing where he's in the corner hanging out by himself, not talking to anybody. No, he has conversations with everybody. And so when that happens, you end up having a good feel for what would work for him and what wouldn't. Well, I'll say is like a good example is from back in now obviously they were going to ask him about Jamar Chase when they were doing the Chase versus Sewell decision, but I think I even wrote this. I don't know if it made it the story or not, but I remember specifically somebody telling me that Burrow said the line, if you draft that guy, we will never miss another deep ball. Like the being like, and if that's what if that's what you'll have here, like that chemistry and connection I will have with him throwing the ball down the field will be unlike any other. And was that true? Sure as hell was. 2021, man, go ball after go ball after go ball. What he just went and got and kept doing the gritty. It was like there it was, and that's the type of thing that the type of line that sticks out when they're trying to make decisions in the draft or in free agency with guys that he really knows well. And the Chase thing is kind of a rare, unique outlier example because they knew each other so well. But that's sort of the method. Probably a good example of how his input can steer things.
And you got to listen to that input more when he crushes his first move as Joe the GM. Of course, you got to give the guy a little bit more credence. I do think it would be weird, though, if that was the role of the franchise quarterback. Like some fans think it is. Like at the end of the season, Joe just comes in with a cut list of like, here's the guys we need to get rid of. And if some of those guys are still there at the end of the season, that would be pretty awkward, if a quarterback was compiling that list.
Yeah,
I can see that as like an Aaron Rodgers thing where he's like, hey, we got to get rid of this guy, bring in.
I don't know about cut list. I don't know about cut list, but and this is not necessarily just a Burrow thing. I think the captains certainly all have influence. They know the guys that are trouble in the locker room and that are not fitting in or people are kind of getting tired of, and that information gets relayed. I mean, that's not people know what's going on, and that's part of why you set up that hierarchy there, and that's why those leaders are so important. I mean, they can steer the direction of a lot of things that way of this isn't working here or there, and that's Burrow's at front and center with that too. Again, that's all that. And he's not the snitch going into the office like, you are not going to believe what Tyler Boyd did today. He was cutting his toenails next to my locker, right? Like it's not like that. But over the course of time and you start talking about it, it's like, maybe it would be, this one is not fitting in as well as we thought it would, or there's some trouble brewing in the offensive line room, whatever. You heard that from Ted Karras or somebody. But that's all part of the leadership part of the locker room.
Yeah, so he is pretty involved. He's not making all the calls, and he's more than just the crackers and cupcakes guy. He's not just sitting around in a room until they need somebody to come to dinner and like, Joe, throw on a nice shirt and get out here to the restaurant. Like he at least has a little bit more input from that perspective.
And he doesn't always throw on a nice shirt. Sometimes he wears Seinfeld sweatpants or his Looney Tunes stuff. I mean, it's like that's fine too, which I appreciate. I miss the days of Burrow showing up and just walking down Columbia Parkway to go walk into the precinct in a Looney Tunes sweatshirt, which is just an all-time power move.
It really is. I mean, maybe you need to do more of a deep dive into the Joe Burrow fashion and how it correlates, like what he wears to a dinner.
I'm not doing Joe Burrow fat. We did Joe Burrow fashion.
A good sweatshirt, does that mean the guy's getting signed? If you're a free agent, he's just wearing Looney Tunes. Does that mean they don't care about you? And this is a sign you should come to town?
I actually think the lower the level of clothing is actually the better for you as a free agent. That's how comfortable Burrow is. He's like, I'm showing you my true self. Yeah.
So if he shows up at dinner in a top hat and a monocle, you just better leave town. You don't even wait for dessert.
By the way, do you get these like whether it's like old, it says like 10 years ago on Facebook or whatever, these memories that pop up. I had one pop up where I apparently had a very strong opinion about Mr. Peanut in 2009, that he was just a regular peanut and not some fancy one, that he just happens to own a monocle. And I'm like, man, I don't really remember this version of myself that had such strong Mr. Peanut feelings. Now, I agree. I think I still kind of agree with that, but I just feel like I get nervous when I see some things from my former self that I'm like, man, I probably shouldn't have had such a strong opinion on this.
It just makes you question how you were able to be this successful in life. Here we are in 2009. There's a recession going on. Everybody's panicked about the housing market collapse, and you're just a Mr. Peanut truther out there.
Yeah.
But like, guys, we need to stop worrying about those elites. We need to start looking at the peanut elites and really questioning their bona fides here. The guy just has fancy clothes. That's it. We don't have to call him Mr.
No. And look, monocles are not expensive. I mean, if he was wearing all kinds of like jewelry and diamonds and stuff, okay, we can talk a little bit more about Mr. Peanut being strong and being real fancy, but anybody can go buy a monocle. Okay. I mean, it's not that times weren't that tough. All right. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, I just was a little alarmed by that. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm kind of alarmed. I would like to go deeper down this Mr. Peanut rabbit hole and really see, like, what were you doing in 2009? Where were you working?
I was in Albany, Georgia, home of Trent Brown, actually.
It's a good thing that, Tweet didn't get you fired then. They love peanuts down in Georgia, and you're anti-peanut.
Yeah, no, certainly. And I think that's probably why it was front and center on my mind at the time, was just being surrounded by so much peanut talk. But,
you had enough.
Yeah, I'd had enough. I was covering Trent Brown as a massive freshman at Deerfield Windsor School, in like playing high school football, just crushing tiny kids in high school football games. It was hysterical, actually. I haven't been able to talk to Trent about that, but I can't wait to let him know that I saw him crush many tiny Georgia football players' dreams. I mean, because he was as big then as he is now, and it was very scary to watch a 15-year-old do that.
Yeah, that's insane to watch them go against like a grown man, basically. I do wonder if he's going to be frustrated the first time he sees you in the locker room. He's like, oh, not the Mr. Peanut guy. I thought I was done with him forever.
Wouldn't shut up about it every time he came to cover a game. Yeah.
We're at the end of free agents, or getting past all the big moves in free agency. There's still going to be some small splashes here and there. But if you're looking at the AFC North, this is our next question. Which team should Bengals fans fear the most from their offseason moves?
The thing is, I think the Steelers have made some quietly solid moves, but they still have this quarterback situation. Like, is Russell Wilson really going to work? Is Justin Fields going to end up winning that job? Does that even matter? Like, I think they've done a solid job. I just don't know that it's necessarily been enough. Cleveland always finds a way to win the offseason. It's like that. You feel like they're always making some shrewd moves. I mean, they trade for Jerry Jeudy, which could work. I don't know about paying him as they did.
A lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but you look at some of their moves that they've made. They feel like they've been quiet. They've been very sound. They've added. Everybody's kind of the one move that people talk a lot about would be the Ravens adding Derrick Henry, but I just think that they have such a net negative of losses this year, where they've just seen too many good players and coaches. Very importantly, we talked a lot last year about the Eagles and brain drain when they lost both their coordinators. I mean, you're losing like this entire defensive staff essentially, and a lot of your critical players like Geno Stone, who comes here. And when that happens, they lose Kevin Zeitler. They're rebuilding their line. They lose their right tackle, Morgan Moses. They're rebuilding their line. There's just all of that stuff is going on there. And they have a lot of good players, but they've lost a lot. And so I still think they're a net negative. So I guess the Browns would be my answer, just because I think that the quarterback, I'm just not buying Russ or Justin Fields actually working out in Pittsburgh. But so for that fact, I think the Browns have been solid. I wouldn't have done the extension with Jeudy, but I do think having Jeudy and Cooper together could be pretty fun. But so that's I guess that's my answer there. I don't know if it was a good one, but I think that there's just been too many losses for the Ravens for me to consider them, even though they typically are the winner in these situations, it seems.
Yeah, there's a lot of expectation around the league too after the season they had. It's just like the Ravens are going to be good again, and you're not really looking at some of these details where they did take some big hits. Derrick Henry is a flashy signing, but you don't know what Derrick Henry you're necessarily going to get. The Derrick Henry that's going to run against the Bengals defense as it is probably going to have a lot more success than he is against the other teams. But you take the Browns, they let their franchise quarterback get away. So once Flacco's gone to a different,
it's true. No more Flacco.
They had a guy, and he went and he got paid somewhere else. And I still don't know if the Watson thing. I feel like they should just cut their losses, almost like a Russell Wilson situation. Like just get rid of the guy and throw in behind somebody else, reboot your franchise, and give it to Joe Flacco and let it fly.
Yeah, because you got to be thinking about the future. That's why you go with Flacco. You think about the future. That's right, and what he could be.
Tom Brady played football until he was like in his mid-50s, right? So Joe Flacco still has 15 years of good football.
Plenty of time. Plenty of time. So much good football left in front of him. So many more interceptions to be thrown. So
the Steelers, I do like them picking up Queen. That defense gets scarier with that move.
Yeah, no, I thought, and again, another one moving across the division, losing Queen and Stone, two division rivals, is not small. I just think, there's just a lot, but you're right though. The Ravens always seem to find a way. I mean, John Harbaugh is a hell of a coach, and they always seem to find a way and turn it over, and they'll draft a bunch of dudes that'll probably work out, and they'll be in the mix without question. But they took on a lot of losses.
If we're talking brain drain, how much do you think Cleveland is really going to be affected by losing their offensive line coach?
I think that's maybe the least discussed huge thing that happened in the division is Bill Callahan leaving. He was just, it's not like they brought in a bunch of stars on the offensive line and all of a sudden we're great up front. I mean, he was developing and finding later round guys. I mean, guys that were journeymen, the Wyatt Tellers of the world, and they would play great, and they play great together, and they have this great running game. And you can argue he's been the best offensive line coach in football for a number of years. And if you ask anybody that knows, they'll tell you outside of your two coordinators, the most important, and head coach, the most important coach in the building is the offensive line coach, and one of the most important people in your building. It's just so critical to have somebody that can get that group to work together or nothing works. And he's one of the best. And so them trying to figure it out without him is a huge deal. I'm with you on that. A massive deal there.
Staying with the offensive line with our next question from Michael. Is there any scenario that could play out on draft night when the Bengals might select Jackson Powers Johnson at 18? He seems like a can't miss prospect who could strengthen the interior of the line, start day one at guard, and be the center of the future while being insurance in case of a Karras injury.
I don't, I think there's a scenario. Sure. I mean, I don't know that it's likely just because I think you're going to have, I think the Karras future thing is going to be a question that they have to get figured out, but I don't know that they would address it there in round one. It's always possible if a guy's worth a first round pick, if he has a first round grade, it's always possible that they could go best player available and say, we're doing it. We're going to keep investing in our line. I just don't think it's likely, not with all these tackles that also have positional flexibility that are going to be available there. I think it's more likely that if you're talking offensive line, that's where you go, or Byron Murphy or one of these corners to go to. I'm not going to call it non-premium because we've seen so much investment across the league. We know how much Burrow cares about that strong, anchored, firm pocket, and you do have a guy who's in his 30s and 1 year away, in the last year of his contract that they have to think about. They do like to work 1 year ahead. But to me, that feels more like a projection pick on day 2 or 3, early day 3, that you are hoping to develop some guy who you think, man, by next 1 year in our system, he'll be really good. He could be the guy of the future. I don't know that you're using a first round pick on that when there's going to be other options there. But I appreciate the thought. I don't think it's an impossibility. I'm sure it's something they'll discuss because that is a real need, and they'll never go wrong talking offensive line in the first round. But I'd say it's unlikely, but not impossible.
Especially with so many great tackles there and that need. You don't know exactly what kind of performance you'll get from Trent Brown, how many games he'll play. And you kind of need somebody there. So they would have to go round 2 tackle. And then you've got the needs on the defensive line. And, all of a sudden you're starting to run out of those premium picks. So I think it's going to be a real shock if they don't go to, either that tackle position or on the defensive line. Maybe a trade back scenario if you're going to take because he'd probably still be there, Jackson.
I think that's something, and I look forward to. I know as we go through our draft episodes here and start writing more about draft stuff in depth on movement. I think there's a real point to discuss the value of movement in this draft for them because it's kind of a weird spot. Where if a certain number of guys that they really like aren't there, they would be probably better off moving back, adding picks. I just think they could do a lot of damage on day 2 with all the positions that have depth, and you can add multiple players at different positions. You could have 2 defensive tackles. You could have a couple of wide receivers even. You could go into, offensive. You could still get a really good offensive lineman further back in round 1. I think there's a real point of discussion there. And that's where you could do something like also take care of the guard center thing like you're talking about. So, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. It's something that could happen. And that would probably more be how you end up with somebody like Jackson Powers Johnson or Barton from Duke or whoever you're talking about. That'd be an interior guy, would be probably in a trade back scenario.
It does. Just the idea of a trade back sort of scares me, though, because there is so much good top flight talent. And, if you look at enough mock drafts, you can talk yourself into a trade back because you're like, this guy's available. This guy's available. Yeah. If you're a huge Johnny Newton guy, there's scenarios where he could fall another 5-6 picks and still be there. Maybe one of the corners slips a little bit, or you like one of the receivers that doesn't go. It just seems like it's going to be pretty unlikely that, Powers Johnson is going to end up being the pick. But I guess, we have a long time to debate the ins and outs of what they're going to do on draft day.
A month.
Are you ready?
A month of mock drafts being updated.
Every day, breaking news. My mock draft has been reassembled. All right. So you went to opening day yesterday,
I did.
Right? How'd it go for you?
It was excellent. It was a great time. Everybody had fun. The Reds won. The city was alive with the sound of music and the smell of marijuana. I mean, it was It's everywhere.
Music and marijuana. That's Cincinnati for
they
you.
go together. I mean, look, that's
Forget
it's what
your chili. It's music in Weed Town.
Skyline is
USA.
drowned out these days. Okay, you're not getting the waft of the skyline when you're out anywhere. And that's not even just Cincinnati. That's everywhere, but specifically.
I think that Skyline will probably also benefit from the rise of marijuana use in Cincinnati. You know, we'll see some tangential benefit there. This is an opening day related question from Daniel. Not that we're turning suddenly into a baseball podcast, even though, you know, the Reds, like the Bengals, have had some big injuries. They're going to have to monitor this season. Opening day question from Daniel. Run, pass, or boot the following boastfully obnoxious homerisms. Nowhere does opening day like Cincinnati. We have the oldest franchise. Nowhere makes pizza and bagels better than New York because of the water. And nowhere does barbecue better than Texas / North Carolina / Kansas City / Memphis. Anywhere with smokers and meat. We practically invented barbecue. How are you going to run past boot those obnoxious?
Which one I think is the most obnoxious? I don't think nowhere does opening day like Cincinnati is obnoxious. All you have to do is look at the pictures from yesterday of a million people. I mean, there was probably another 20,000 people outside of the stadium while the game was going on and everyone was still inside the stadium. If someone can actually show me another city that looks like that on their baseball opening day, then I'll say that's an obnoxious statement. But I don't think it has to do with the oldest franchise. I think it has to do with the way that it's celebrated today. The pizza and bagels, I don't know, man. Like, a lot of places do good pizza, so I'm not gonna. I don't know. I'm not here to have to besmirch New York pizza, but I do think it's a little obnoxious. There's good pizza everywhere. You know who else does good pizza? Sicily. They do good pizza.
I've heard they've got pizza over there.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not again. This is not. I have no bad words to say, but the most obnoxious is probably barbecue, because it is true. Like, everybody thinks they have the best barbecue, and there's a million different ways to do it in a million different places. So let's not act like they're the only ones that do it. I heard Montgomery Inn has the best barbecue and invented meats, ribs, the ribs king.
Yeah, it's just there's too many cities involved with the barbecue debate, and anytime there's that many, I feel like you can you can easily rule this out then, because one hasn't clearly established itself. It's not like you're picking between two or three. There's just too many different ones there. You know, the New York pizza stuff. New York pizza is amazing. I lived there for 5 years. I'm going to go to bat for New York pizza. It's incredible. But here's the problem with it is, like you said, there's good pizza other places. Some of the best pizza I had when I lived in New York actually got in Jersey. So, you know, that might undercut it a smidge, even if it's the same style regionally. The thing that I like about the opening day claim is it's just so niche, right? Like, it's not like you're saying we're the best baseball town, even though some people will try and push that. But if you just focus on opening day and that nobody does it better, I mean, the proof is in the photographs, you know, like everyone can see those. That's not a made up thing where it's just photoshopped people all around. You see blobs of red that you can clearly tell has been doctored. And there aren't a lot of other cities out that are like opening day, that's when we shine. Some fan bases will try and claim, you know, like the 11th man type thing or whatever about the intensity and the passion of the fan base, but they're not picking one day. You know, there's nobody. We're like, the best.
We don't have a lot of longevity.
In-season tournament fan base. You know,
we do one day well, and the rest, you know, comes and goes. All right, but that day always strong, no doubt.
Another opening day question. This one's from Rick. Out of all the Reds and Bengals, who would be the best at pulling a prime time and playing for both teams, playing both sports?
You know, I think it would have to be Ellie. I mean, the dude is super fast. He's 6'5". You're telling me that won't play in the NFL at receiver potentially? I don't know if he can catch at all, but he can run straight really fast, and he's really tall. That seems to mean a lot. So I would say Ellie De La Cruz can play receiver in the NFL if he just runs go balls over and over. And you can give me 10 snaps where Ellie goes out there on first down on the outside and just run straight. Okay. And then throw it deep. I think you could make a pretty good case for that being the best.
Yeah, there's not a lot of positions that are really going to work both ways. And you sort of need to be like Primetime was an athletic freak where you're not going to have the time and discipline to learn both sports the way that you would at a major league level. Cause you can't just do all those meetings and all that training and all that. So you need some insane athleticism to make up for some of those deficiencies where you just make plays other people can't. Right. Like, and that's something that he could do. 6'5", 200 pounds, incredibly fast. You throw the ball up there, he could make some plays.
Theoretically. I will say
theoretically.
This. If you've ever watched, like, just because you're an athlete does not mean you can swing a baseball bat, by the way. I have seen some of the worst baseball swings of my life made by Bengals players at the like batting practice thing that they go do sometimes.
What about Joe Burrow hitting his home runs?
That's true. Now, maybe if there's, I guess Burrow probably could go and just be a natural athlete and maybe get some hits. I'm sure. But I'm saying I'm not counting on many football players to be able to smoothly transition and actually hit the baseball. I'm not counting on that at all. I'm counting more on a great athlete being able to go over and do some athletic things in the NFL.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick one, it would be Cody Ford, who's to make the move from football to baseball. I read that he was a high school pitcher for like 2 years. So yeah, like that's a way that you could really get a guy over there. Sure, he's not going to be running, chasing fly balls in the outfield, but maybe he gets you a couple innings of relief. I like the idea of like a 300-pound pitcher.
Yeah, no one's charging the mound at that point. And when he's probably pretty, I mean, I don't know Cody Ford's accuracy. But I'm just going to guess if he's just up there winging it and is a professional football player, he might hit some people. At least, you're not going to have a brawl to worry about. Or if the one does happen, you're definitely winning. That's good.
Absolutely. There's too much specialization too, I think, these days for it to get successfully pulled off, because that's not a lot of crossover. Joe Burrow playing high school basketball in the winter in football, that kind of makes a little bit more sense to me. Some baseball, basketball crossover. You see that a lot of colleges sometimes too. There's not a lot of football, baseball crossover at colleges anymore because it is such a year-round thing. And I can't even think of that many Bengals guys. I heard somebody say that DJ Reader was like
DJ Reader. Yeah, he did play baseball in Clemson. Yep.
If he was still here, he would have been a fun one to. What
Again,
position was he?
Another reason they blew it, right?
They did.
He would have been perfect answer to this question, and they blew it.
Reds run into injury problems, and all of a sudden DJ Reader is, on the roster, and that's a fun story.
They're only about a couple injuries away from having to bring DJ down from Detroit to fill in a little bit.
I mean, the team is just, because they're still going to be decent this year. I think the Reds will be. So if the Reds were terrible, though, what a great PR gimmick that would have been. You pull a Bengals captain, and now all of a sudden he's going to, pitch a little bit for your team, and that'd be a fun way to sell tickets for a weekend.
Can't be worse than Ricky Karcher.
I mean, that was fun to watch too, though. I would go watch that again any day. All right, so moving along on our list of questions. Do you want an ambush question? We got one of those.
Yeah, ambush me. Let's go.
How do you feel about the disputed canonization of St. Patrick? I'm sorry to have to throw a saint question at you. This is the controversial type of topic that could take a half a beat here, take half a minute and really think about this, because when you were just a young reporter throwing out Mr. Peanut hot takes, you didn't have a lot to lose. If you mess this one up, you could lose your entire podcast empire. You could have protests. The athletic bosses, they're going to have to deal with the fallout from this. So, now that you've kind of thought about it, how do you feel about the disputed canonization of St. Patrick?
Well, I 12 years of Catholic schooling, I learned a lot about a lot of saints. And I feel like accepting that not every saint even is perfect is important. Okay. And so I think everybody should just be cool with St. Patrick. Like he's good to everybody. And I think everybody needs to let it go and find other things to worry about. Like, I just think whether it's the Catholic Church or whether it's any number of religious institutions have bigger issues than this. And I think everyone should focus a little bit more big picture and not worry about anything that has to do with St. Patrick. Like, everybody is comfortable with that being a day. Everybody enjoys his presence. He adds to our society with his day. So can we just let it go and move on?
Well, the thing that really surprised me is because I got this email and I didn't know that it was disputed. I didn't realize St. Patrick's not a saint, that he's not officially on the list of canonized saints or whatever, because he was too early in the process. And I feel like that's what the church needs to retroactively fix, give him one of those celebrate, like an honorary sainthood, and just throw that up there, because we can't lose St. Patrick's Day. It's too much of a cultural
We're not
thing
losing anything. Nobody's losing anything. Colleges tried to lose St. Patrick's Day, and then it just became Green Beer Day at all the bars, right? Like, no one's losing this. They're not they can keep him out of whatever they want to keep him out of. The current setup is fine with everyone. I think everybody has found that this is just fine. And so I don't think we need to change anything. I'm fine that he's not on the list. I don't need him to have an honorary degree.
I don't think that there's anybody who would be less fun to hang out with on St. Patrick's Day than the guy going around saying, St. Patrick's not a real saint, right? And just trying to hit you with history and facts. And you're like, my guy, I'm drinking beer at 10 a.m. I don't care about what happened centuries ago, I
kind of wish that guy was like had the presence of those repent people in front of the Reds games and who have the megaphones and the picket signs. They're like, St. Patrick needs it, just really getting after it at people while bagpipes play over their shoulders. That's right.
You guys are all living a lie. We don't care. We're not at work today. We're drinking beer in the morning. This is great.
We're just living.
Yeah. Our next, we do have another ambush question. We could kick this one a week.
Boy,
if you feel like it's ambushed enough.
Yeah. They're coming. Let's kick it. That one was pretty intense. Let's kick that one. And because we got to get to some comments and some comedy talk.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do want this to be a reminder. If you have a question you want me to hit Paul with, I've clearly shown that nothing is off the table.
Yeah, that's
if
proof.
We're going to throw St. Patrick canonization talk at you on Good Friday and really put your years of Catholic education on the spot like that.
Yeah.
No holds barred. So send your questions to thegrowlerpodcast@gmail.com, not thegrowlerpodcast.com, as some people might tell you about this show and how it works. It
does exist. That website does exist, but I don't know.
Is it yours?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't know if this was going to be another Urban Dictionary situation.
Right? It is a real thing that does exist there, but it's not. You're going to have trouble sending an email there.
Okay. I didn't want to learn something else about the word growler or something and just I'm not going to go to a website like Dictionary. That. Yeah, good. So yeah, you can send your ambush questions to me that way. Comments, looking into the comment section. I'll do that, even though, it can be a dark and sad place to be sometimes, the comment section. And by the way, we did get an email from somebody that's calling you out for not replying to them on Twitter. And they wanted me to sort of intervene on their behalf. I don't know what I can really do, but what is your stance on interacting with people on Twitter?
It typically is a lose-lose situation to be, if it's like, if there is any bit, even a twinge of confrontation, or there is no place where I win and I manicure the perfect tweet response and it just turns into a whole crazy thing, and then you still end up looking like you're just flooded with crap and people yelling and screaming. I just try to stay out of that. It's hard to get to all. Like, I can get to some, but you could never get to all of them. So I stay out of it for the most part. I try not to use Twitter too much for that. It's just hard for me to get to all of them. And then some of them go sideways, and it just seems like it's really hard to be on there all the time because there's so much negativity. Even if you're trying to be innocuous, I'm trying to talk about, like, the most basic thing. I'm trying to talk about the sun coming out being nice. And next thing you know, I'm like anti-moon or something. And it's like, you just never know. I just try to keep it to a minimum and Bengals stuff that's non-controversial. And so if I apologize if people have felt like I'm not responding to them all the time, I try to keep it to more of a minimum and in Bengals realm.
Paul loves the sun. It's causing global warming. It's ruining the planet. You hate the planet, Paul. That's what this is really about.
It's true.
Yeah, you really can't get into it too much. Like, it is fun. Some people really dunk on their haters and trolls well. Mina Kimes does a good job of that on Twitter, but it also just invites a whole lot more of that action and behavior from people. And despite you ranting about not liking Twitter, now X, we are still in the part where we're recording advertisers for the show. So if Elon is listening and wants to pay us some money, we will change this. And Paul will say glowing things about the positivity and newsworthiness of X as soon as next week.
It has many positive newsworthy functions. It's great in many respects.
Well, we're not getting paid yet. Take it easy. Take it easy.
Right. You're right.
If Elon's not throwing the cash at you, you don't need to give it up. But I will go into those comments and I will find your haters and present those to you. I'm going to really circumvent the system. Although this was an easier week because there wasn't a whole lot of negativity out there. And so this was from Larry. Can we get an analysis on how Bengals' recent draft history of offensive linemen is poor? I like the free agent signings, but that doesn't show how they've missed on scouting and drafting a lineman. Who is scouting linemen leading us to the draft? This guy was obviously upset about, you wrote your story about the explosive pieces added to the offense, and he wants to know why the offensive line draft just hasn't worked out.
It's a great question, and it's something that we've kind of tried to touch on. It seems like year after year. I know last year had a story on the offensive line draft and their approach and how it's maybe been different and how many times they've missed and they've been bad at drafting offensive linemen. I mean, that's no secret. It's been a major issue. So yeah, I think expect more analysis in that way. I mean, we've kind of been talking about it a lot on here, and I'm happy to go after it again. Once more, we'll go into the fact that they can't draft offensive linemen. Well, there's no question it's going to be a big deal this year. So I'm positive that, Larry, you will get your wish. We will have more analysis of why they stink at drafting offensive linemen this year. I promise you.
Right. It's not like the offensive line situation is something that hasn't been discussed at all in Cincinnati.
I think the offensive line in Cincinnati might be the city that discusses the offensive line more than any other NFL city. And I appreciate that. That's because they know ball. You know what I mean? They're true and they get it. That said, and it's been so poor consistently for almost a decade now.
Yeah.
So.
But there is more to life than just the offensive line. You got to write,
and it's better.
New pieces. So that's important. Ready to shift gears even more on this Dey Light Good Friday edition.
Good Friday.
So in the comedy world, I did want to plug. I'm going to be at Madison Live April 2nd, I believe, for Joke Jam with Josh Sneed, which is our new first Tuesday of every month. So I think tickets are on sale for that. April 6th, I'll be in Dayton, Kentucky at Commonwealth Sanctuary. April 11th through the 14th at the St. Charles Funny Bone in Missouri. And then I've got a bunch of other dates on my Instagram. If you want to go see me, all these cities we've talked about, I don't think I have any shows in the Philippines yet, but I'll work on that too. This is a joke that I'm working on.
Taiwan now. Do you have a Taiwan show planned?
I do need to set up a Taiwan show. I feel like I should do that sooner rather than later, given how things can go in Taiwan. So I'm going to get on that and try and book some Taiwan action here before the end of the year. And if you're listening and you're a comedy savvy person and want me to come to your hometown, you can send those requests to me and I'll try to work with those clubs too. And we'll spread the Dey Light listenership all over this country and all over the world, I guess. No countries off limits. This is the joke that I'm working on this week.
All right, let's hear it.
So then this might be controversial too, but I've had to start lying because this is one of the signs that I'm getting older, right? And as the resident young person on this podcast network, since I'm still in my 30s and everyone else is ancient, you still, even in your later 30s, you do start to notice signs of aging. And there's the typical ones, but the ones that really throw you are the ones you didn't see coming, right? And for me, I've started lying about where I was on 9/11, and that's not something where I saw coming. And I'm not saying like I was in the towers or whatever. I'm not saying like Steve Ranazizi, I'm not trying to steal some clout that way. But I was in high school when it happened. And now that's been long enough that it starts to date you. And as I get closer to 40, I've just had to start I tell people I don't say what year in high school. I just say the generic high school. And I feel like that's just going to get worse. We're like, where were you? I was in school. I was just in school. It could have been anywhere 1st through 12th. The president was reading us a story, in fact, that day. Like, it's just going to get worse and worse for me.
Is there something to be said about those kids that were in that room? Maybe like, is there a story about all the kids that the president was actually reading to that day? Like, where are they now? What are they doing? How did it affect them?
Yeah, I think that is one of the better 9/11 stories. Is I was just having some quiet story time with the president,
Yeah,
and
just say you were in that room. I think that's where you need to lie about.
And he probably owes you another story. Story time might have been cut after that first book. Maybe there was a second book, and he's got some time now. He's just painting. Maybe you go to his ranch and he reads to all these adults now that missed out on their prime time with the president many years
gather
ago.
Around for Clifford the big red dog. Yeah.
Even outside of lying about where I was on 9/11, the second one that hurts me the most about getting older is like sometimes I'll do college shows still, right? And when I'm in a college town, you have food options that you don't normally consume in your everyday life. So for me, like going to school in Athens, I would indulge in the occasional DP dough, right? And late at night. And I got that after a show and it was garbage. It was terrible. Like, you don't realize that when you're in your 30s, it's not good food. It's missing a key ingredient. And that's the side dish of 17 beers first, like it's, and the fact that like you can still, like I felt awful the next day and I wasn't drinking a ton at this show because I was part of a longer run. And that's a hard feeling when you feel like hungover from bad food. In your 30s, you can't drink like you used to. But the fact that like you can still feel like crap because of a quesadilla, that's just a real shot.
Yeah. And DP dough, when you really take a look at it and you're like, you shouldn't put this much cheese in a thing. Like that's too much cheese. Like you shouldn't be eating that much. And I just feel like you don't really realize that at the time until, your maturity sets in. And you have a better understanding of the usage of cheese in our world and what it can do. And that's just too much cheese.
Did you have a favorite college late night food?
Probably was CP dough at the time. I mean, I think that.
Have you had it since?
Goodfellas pizza. Yeah, maybe one other time I would go back and try to. But actually, Goodfellas pizza was always a standard for me in Athens, where I always caught.
Goodfellas was awesome.
Yes, so I was and I still like now. If I ever go back, that's usually a definite pop in for me if we're out.
And having a job that requires a lot of travel, you can't always eat the best. What's your eating habits like on the road when you're covering a game in a different city? Are you always like trying to hit whatever the famous food is in that town, or are you pretty?
Oh yeah, well usually we'll have a nice meal. Usually a bunch of us that are out on making the trip amongst the media. We'll go out together somewhere, some decent spot that's known locally for whatever their deal is. Barbecue probably in half of the NFL cities. But yeah, that, and then a lot of the hotel buffet and things like that, just because that's just easy and convenient and right there. But I don't eat terribly on the road. It's usually all right. It's not like a DP dough fest or anything like that.
We know a lot of people in the sports media world that aren't the healthiest, and it's the same in comedy. And because when you work late at night, like after shows, there's not a lot open, right? So for me, it's 11:30, 12:30 at night. A lot of these cities, they're not 24-hour cities. There are very few of those anyway. So your food options are pretty limited anyway. And that's how you end up eating an entire pizza at a Holiday Inn in Des Moines, Iowa, and it's not the healthiest lifestyle. You got to fix that or it gets out of control pretty quick.
Yeah. We were talking about this before the show about signs of you're getting old. In that I realized how old I was probably getting yesterday when I got legitimately excited about the fact that we had private bathroom access at with our tickets yesterday for opening day. And I was like, it also had free beer. And I really was not as interested in that as I was the fact that I wouldn't have to wait in a long bathroom line on opening day, because they are insane. Like, it's the most insane bathroom lines you'll ever see at any sporting event is opening day at a Reds game. And I was like, man, free bathroom access. This is so great. How old am I?
This is how the other half lives, folks. If you're listening to the show, if you work hard enough in life, you'll get to that point where you get private bathroom access on opening day. That is a big flex because there are different options.
I'm not hiding it. I'm not hiding it.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get it. Like it's not because it's just something I was lucky enough to stumble into, and I'm very happy about that.
But that really though, and it sounds silly, but that is you can get beer anywhere. And sure, you're going to pay a little bit more, but do you really want to be slamming a bunch of free beers than waiting in a 15-minute long bathroom line? Like the private bathroom access is nice.
Let me just tell you, the jealous looks that I got from people when I told them that I had access to a bathroom without a line was the most powerful things that I saw all day. There's no question about it. Just being like, oh, tell me about this place. Where is it? How do I get there? Please.
Yeah, everyone's going to try and impersonate you. Be like, yes, I'm Paul Daner. Where's my private restroom? And
sorry, this very strong wristband gives me things that y'all could never dream of.
Yeah, it's like your magic power. But you know what? Good for you. You've earned that in life. You deserve that private bathroom.
Yeah.
Especially after the week you've had. You traveled this week and then went straight to opening day. So you need a little bit of that. How did your travels go?
It was excellent outside of I was talking yesterday with Jay actually about the fact that we had like a 5-hour delay in the Tampa airport, and then we had the airport onboarding where they're like, look, these guys, this crew that has us delayed, they're gonna time out here. If you guys can't board this plane faster than normal, you're gonna have to wait another 2 hours to fly. You've never seen a group of people get their stuff together and more efficiently board an airplane than they did yesterday. It just goes to show that people don't care about others. They could do it right the whole time. They just choose not to, because when asked to do it, this group of people came together to be quick, to be efficient, to be courteous, to sit down, and we all flew on our way. It was a truly amazing experience to be a part of that in an airport. And I credit absolutely everyone there. We also learned about meal vouchers. When they give you meal vouchers, this is a good tip if you ever get this. They give you meal vouchers for a delay or whatever. This happens a lot, and you have to use them in the next 24 hours or in that gate or whatever. If there is a Starbucks or any place that like has an online ordering where they keep your money in their bank, you can just bank all of that money onto your Starbucks card per se, and use it whenever you want to. You're not having to use $12 at Panda Express today. You can just save it for something that you would actually use later on. Great tip. Good to know. Not everybody would have thought of that, and was really happy. Somebody said they read that on Reddit, who was right behind us. And thank you, Reddit user, for spreading that information around the gate so that we could all bank that $12 per flight into our Starbucks accounts.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have known that without that person. This is why you need to start going into those dark corners of the internet, like reading the comments, reading the Reddit, and it's going to change your life. You just have to put up with all that negativity.
Yes.
Do you think that's true that they would have had to sideline that crew? I think that would be a great way, though, for all airlines to start lying. Like, listen, if you guys don't do this in 20 minutes, we're a bunch of toddlers, basically. But if you can't do this right, this plane's going to turn around and you're all going home. That kind of attitude.
100%. I think that's how you fix the airline boarding.
Did anybody clap on when your plane landed?
No, they clapped when they said that we were going.
They're
like, we're gonna get you guys out of here. We think you guys can go now. I mean, it was, although I heard multiple claps because there was like a 3-hour period where no planes were going in or out of Tampa Airport, and so anytime there was good news, I mean, you would just hear clap. It was like lots of clapping from the gate E70, clapping from 72, clapping from down over in D. Like you heard everybody starting to get so joyous whenever it was announced that a flight was actually going to board. People had been stuck. It was a nasty storm that just, it just had people in real dark places. There's nothing quite as hopeless as feeling stranded in an airport, because you start thinking, maybe I just live here now.
Yeah, in my mind, I'm just picturing the NCAA selection show, where they're just cutting to different little gates, and you get everyone in their sweats, and we're going to Charlotte, and everyone's and then you see the team that's left out, and everyone's hanging their heads because they got another delay, and That would have been fun to watch. I would have actually.
And the Delta committee chairman has to come on and explain why he picked E72 over E74 because it was something they'd been waiting longer. They had a more harrowing experience in the middle. Like I feel like you really could replay this whole thing. That is exactly what it felt like.
You get the one gate that like, okay, you guys are gonna get to take off, but it's like the playing game. We're gonna put you on one of those Boeing jets that falls apart midair. So yeah, you're still gonna get to where you go. We just don't know if you're gonna make it in one piece, but you're still part of it, but you're not quite part of it. That sort of thing. We were our travels. We went to Washington D.C., so we got to travel by car, which was much easier. And this was the first trip that we had, and we've done it for 3 years, but the first one, because our kids are 11, 8, and 4, and it actually went pretty smoothly. Because that 4 is such a tricky age, because every year before that, on an 8-hour car ride, it can just be a nightmare. There was 1 year that she was addicted to listening to Kung Fu Fighting. And so we had that on replay for hours, just hours of Kung Fu Fighting to keep this little 2-year-old from just losing her crap and just screaming the entire time. We probably heard it more than 100 times to and fro DC. It was insane. I've never experienced anything like it.
You never know what song you're gonna get stuck with at any point. Have we talked about the Macarena here yet? Have I brought this up to you?
No.
The Macarena has become popular in my house somehow. And
with you or the kids?
I'm a big fan.
You're just breaking into it and just loving it.
Yeah, they must have done it at school one day, and now it's like anytime it's like, hey, can we do the Macarena? Let's. So it's like you have to every 5th day. I'm in the kitchen, like, I'm doing the moves, I'm doing the whole thing. It's like, look, we gotta. I'm back. It's all the way back in our house, and it's had a run. I think it's finally fading away right now, thankfully, but. You just get these things that show up, and that was a sad day. Mambo number 5 had a run here for a minute. It's like all these songs are keep coming. I don't know how they get attached to them, but it's like, you never quite know. I'm wary. Luckily, I don't have country music kids right now because I'm wary about like a boot scooting boogie or something that. Kind of like getting back into our lives. I don't want that.
God, that makes me feel old too, that the Macarena is like, oh, let's do a dance from generations ago. It's become like with the Charleston or the jitterbug, like it
is one of the simpler. I mean, it is one of the simpler of all of the line. If you're trying to teach kids how to do some kind of a dance, it's not very hard. So I will say that. Now I was back in my dancing days, I was a big booty call guy. If you remember that song, there was lots of different moves and you could call out adjustments mid song. I like to kind of take a leadership role if there was a booty call dance going on back in the day. These were far different times where I wasn't as concerned about bathrooms, but it was that was always mine of choice. So I actually look forward to the day that I get to teach them about all the adjustments and additional moves that you can add into the basic standard booty call line dance.
Yeah, when your kids get to learn about the much simpler time that you lived in, where all you cared about was dancing and Mr. Peanut conspiracies. Those were your 2 cornerstones of who you were as a human. Yeah. Dancing and Mr. Peanut is a fraud. That's what
we're learning a lot today.
Easter's around the corner. Here's an Easter-themed run past boot for you. Reese eggs, Peeps, or jelly beans?
Oh, well, I'm booting Peeps. I'm not a Peep guy. I find them weird in their texture. They're concerning.
That's good, because there's a real Peep undercurrent that's been happening lately where people will like violently defend the Peep community, and it is garbage. That's what's weird to me. It's candy that's advertised basically as garbage. It could be from yesterday or 19 years ago, and they're going to taste just as stale as they ever were. And if that's your marketing pitch, that's a garbage candy.
Man, Peeps are hanging on so hard to Easter. It's all they've got. I will say the jelly bean community has made a nice rise. Like we've seen a lot of variations of jelly beans where now you've got the Starburst jelly beans. You've got there's lots of different flavored jelly beans they're not just the old. I think those old black jelly beans. I think about those all the time. The old packs, the old flavor. Like that to me, I had no time for that. I would have put Reese's eggs certainly over top of those. But the new world the advancements in the jelly bean community have really turned me towards them and to put them over top of the Reese's eggs. I love Reese's eggs. I love everything that Reese's makes. Essentially, I'm a big fan of their entire operation. The Hershey segment is very good. But I like what jelly beans doing these days. I think they're built for the future. And I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here to move them up today.
They're innovating in a good way, I feel like, now with the different styles of jelly beans. There was a time when they tried to be innovative, and it was, a lot of Jelly Belly just giving you disgusting flavors, and that was it. It wasn't, we're going to partner with a different brand here, a different candy maker, and make something truly exceptional. It was, here's a jelly bean that tastes like popcorn. And you're like, okay, like this isn't candy anymore. This is just kind of gross. But yeah, the innovation you see in the grocery aisles now, it does elevate it. It's still not, for me, it's not at Reese's egg level. I mean, that's crazy. You're looking at the best seasonal Reese's product there is. If it's Halloween and they're forcing a Reese's pumpkin on you, like, we all know what's up here. That's not going to work. The Reese's Christmas tree is still not anything special, but the Reese's egg is just unparalleled in the Reese's department. So I feel like that still gives you the nod. Although you're right, though, the innovation in the jelly bean game has been fantastic. The pink jelly bean is probably the most reliable of all that old-fashioned Easter candy. So there's a very strong contention you can make for the jelly bean world.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the Reese's people know that we still love them. And if they want to be sponsors on this show, I will eat so many Reese's cups while we talk. I mean, you have no idea. There would be no problem. Even we're recording in the morning. I don't care. I'll wake up. I'll eat the Reese's cereal right here. We can do it all. Like, I'm here for you. So, if you're listening, Reese's marketing folks, we're here for you. You could be part of this. Think about that.
Yeah, we could just set like a number of Reese's cups you have to consume during the show. That would even help boost the YouTube so people could watch as you slowly unwrap the 12 Easter Reese's eggs that you have to eat during an hour-long show. And, that'd be fun to see where that sugar rush takes you. How crazy do you become at the end of the show? It gives people a reason to listen the whole way through.
Yeah, that's all right. Maybe we have to set some limits. But
no limit to Reese's company. Send us the money. Give us all the money. We'll make Paul do eating challenges.
I will do anything for money.
He will recant his Mr. Peanut blasphemies from his past. He'll officially.
I'm really feeling bad about this.
We can dress you up as Mr. Peanut for the right price. That's the important takeaway if you've got money and you work at a company.
Great show. What fun we've had. We've really done it. We've really put it together. So we'll see. If those of you that stuck around to the end, thank you. I hope you feel rewarded by that. And we'll be back, of course, next week. More draft coverage. We're going deep into the draft world now. So next week, we're really going to be deep in it. We'll be back with Dave and Mo next week, Jay and I, and then, of course, Dey Light next Friday. We'll keep in maybe with many more important takes, and maybe with a pile of Reese's cups in front of me. You just never know. Call us. All right. Thanks so much for listening. Mark, appreciate it. We will go see Mark, even in Taiwan, soon coming to you in Taiwan. Keep listening. We'll talk to you later.